The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has occurred for more than 2 years. Most people no longer care about this matter except watching the progress of the conflict in the news every day. Recently, I have seen a video of a Chinese guy in Odessa, the fourth largest city in Ukraine. He didn't have time to evacuate, and found that the fire had hit his house. Through his lens, I saw the life of a civilian during the war. He went to the supermarket to buy things, listened to the shelling and alarms day and night, and watched the smoke and artillery fire from the balcony. An ordinary person was originally looking for a better life in Odessa. There are beautiful girls and the mild climate of the seaside city, but just in the blink of an eye, he is faced with the crushing of the giant wheel of the times. This war is going to be brutal and I hope he will survive. I am still confused and still do not understand how the Ukraine war broke out. The internet is full of unreliable news, except for a few respected professional medias. The official information from Moscow and Kiev is not credible, it is not news, but wartime propaganda. So what happened to Ukraine and Russia? Well, it is irrefutable that invasion is wrong, but to understand this tragedy, moral judgment is not enough. In fact, most people do not understand this conflict. Those who support Ukraine because they hate Russia. Those who support Russia because they hate America. They are just expressing their emotions, not real insights. Today I want to share with you my personal thoughts on this tragedy. The protagonists of this tragedy, Ukraine and Russia, belonged to the same family in distant ancient times, both descendants of Kievan Rus. 30 years ago, Russia and Ukraine joined forces to bring about the collapse of the Soviet Union. Later, the United States and Russia joined forces to transfer all of Ukraine's nuclear weapons to Russia, turning it into a non-nuclear state. What Ukraine looks like today is, in a sense, shaped by Russia and the United States. Historically, the grievances between Ukraine and Russia are very deep. They are reluctant to be tied to their closest relative, Russia, and hope to join the European Union to break away from Russia and become a member of the Western European Club. There was once a political leader in Ukraine who was pro-Russian and hoped to ease relations with Russia, but was directly overthrown by the Ukrainian people. Throughout the country's political atmosphere, pro-Russian political leaders find it difficult to survive, with the overwhelming majority of the population calling for joining the European Union and NATO at all costs. Judging from the common sense of ordinary people, what kind of life Ukrainians are willing to live and what organization they join is their own choice. But Ukraine misjudged the response of its neighbor, Russia. Zelensky, as a comedian, was elected to be the real president because he played an anti-corruption president. Everyone, including me, underestimated him. I thought he would be like the president of Afghanistan, scurrying off like a frightened rat when the war started. He actually stayed, and took advantage of his unique advantages to stimulate European and American sympathy for Ukraine on an unprecedented scale on social media. His speech to the European Parliament almost made the European translators cry. This mass-spreading sympathy, in turn, has influenced Europe and the United States to impose unprecedented sanctions on Russia, and the pressure of public opinion has forced private companies to stay away from Russia. Russia's stock market has nearly halved since the start of the war, and the stock market has closed. The ruble has fallen by a third, 7 Russian banks have been kicked out of the system by SWIFT, and hundreds of multinational companies have announced the termination of their Russian operations. The list of economic consequences is very long. I think the most credible hypothesis is that the outbreak of the war was the result of a joint misjudgment by Putin and Zelensky. The biggest evidence is that neither side appears to have been prepared for the war. The Russian soldiers didn't even know they were going to war, thinking they were going to exercise, and the young Russian soldier even asked a local Ukrainian girl out on Tinder. This is what a young man went to an overseas summer camp to do. A more credible hypothesis is that Putin's original idea was to put planes and artillery assembled on the Ukrainian border. It is totally enough to pretend they were ready to fight. He scorned that his opponent was a non-professional president, a former comedian who would be scared to pee his pants, so he was willing to sit down and negotiate with Russia, accepting military neutrality and not joining NATO. And Ukrainian President Zelensky thought that Putin would be afraid of the deterrence of NATO and the United States, and he was just frightening him, and Putin would not dare to start a war against Ukraine, the second largest country in Europe, with a population of nearly 42 million, because the consequences are too serious. A reasonable assumption is that both sides misjudged the situation and underestimated the other. Putin's several speeches have basically made his worldview and intentions clear. Putin believes that many of the existing land in Ukraine was from Russia, and Ukraine's heavy industry was also established by the Soviet Union. In his eyes, Ukraine, with the property donated by Russia, defected to Russia's enemy is an unforgivable betrayal. Moreover, why can't the Soviet Union put missiles in Cuba, which is 90 miles away from the United States, while the United States can put missiles on Russia's doorstep? Whether it's personal or national dignity, Putin can't swallow this anger. I guess his sadness is also real. Some people ask that Russia's economy is only as large as China's Guangdong province. Why is Putin still so tough? I think it's like playing Texas Hold'em. If you start with 2A, you're going to have a hard time giving up. The A in Russia's hands is its super military strength and nuclear arsenal. Every time there is a conflict, there is a sense of humiliation to back down. Without these 2As in hand, perhaps Russia will embark on another path. Maybe they will find that the enemy missiles are not much different if they are placed at 100 kilometers and 500 kilometers. Maybe they will also find that Russia starts from making plastic flowers and OEM for the developed countries, and integrates into the global supply chain system with the diligence and wisdom of its people. They create prosperity and improve people's living standards, and the overall national strength will be greatly improved. Sometimes, if the advantage is not used properly, it may become an obstacle. In this tragedy, Putin seems to be correct in every step, and the part is the optimal solution, but when combined together, the whole has become a tragedy that a nation of geniuses into the economic and social isolation. What about the responsibilities of other third parties, the US and NATO? NATO's half-assertive, and sometimes encouraging attitude, undoubtedly fuels Ukraine's illusion that NATO will protect them at all costs. Mearsheimer, who famously lectured at the University of Chicago, argued 7 years ago that this NATO mistake would lead to the tragedy in Ukraine today. My moral values cannot defend Russia, but NATO has also played an irresponsible role. In short, this tragedy was caused by many people collectively. Okay, that's all for today. How do you think about it? Please put your comments or suggestions in the comments below, and share your thoughts about today's topic, so that we can have a further discussion. Your immediate reply is the encouragement that we can move on more videos in the future. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day. If you like our videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We will see you in the next video. Goodbye.